All right, folks, welcome to BS session number 27. We're going to have a sit down, a chat, and try and figure out what the hell is going on with guns in Canada.
But some of these bullets, as you saw, have an incendiary device on the tip of it, which is a heat-seeking device.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Welcome to your weekly dose of BS, the Holistically Speaking podcast.
Got a different setup. What do you think? How's my view?
I think it looks rather vaulty. Actually, there's just the right level of darkness. Did you see that Biden speech that he gave there a couple of months ago? And it was
Which one?
They were making fun of him, where the whole background was red, and it was like it was like a Hitler speech. That sort of same dark red theme. Kind of almost.
I try to not watch Biden as much as possible. And the major reason that I do that is I just feel sorry for the man.
Oh, God. I know.
Like, you know how, like,
yeah.
It's not super uncommon for, the leader of a country to age once they take office. Like the 8 years that Obama was in office, like look at him in his inauguration after his first win, his first term, and then look at him when he basically did his concession speech, or not, it wasn't a concession speech, but like before Hillary ran, basically, because he couldn't anymore. And like he looks 20 years older.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Biden looked old when Obama was president.
I think
he looked old when he ran for president. He looks positively Yoda now.
In spite of all the preserves he's got in him of some sort.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I just can't handle looking at the man anymore.
Oh, I know.
And especially, I just feel bad for him when he has his senior moments, which are pretty often, it seems like.
Yep.
Man. Bending is saying that Eagle Run 23 is all up in the 8.6 blackout. I want a full report, Eagle Run. I want to know the good. I want to know the bad. I want to know if I should get one. Honestly, I've got, I know that the blackout is made for semi-autos, but here's the reality. Right now in Canada, we can't have any high-capacity semi-automatic rifles. There are none that are available right now. So I've got a MDT LSS chassis, a Generation 1 LSS chassis that I haven't been doing anything with for a very long time. And I am kicking around the idea of saving up the shekels for one of EM Precision's receivers and getting them to spin me up a 12-inch barreled 8.6 blackout. Now, it would be a bolt action, but I think it would be pretty fucking hot, and it would be a lot of fun to play with. Now, the only thing is that'll only happen soon if this C-21 amendment thing carries through and I lose all of the plans that I have with all of the 180 semi-autos. But, yeah, I guess we'll see how it works out. Mike wants to know if we're talking about the worst trade in WNBA history. Here's what I don't get. They trade for a player that hates her country.
Yeah.
And she's a fucking sport person. Like, she's an athlete anyways. Like, and they take the security agent, who's probably actually a spy, who could probably actually, help the country if he was released. And what do? They trade the guy who literally has earned a title of the Merchant of Death. He is responsible for trading so many firearms and trading so many lives for guns.
Right. So a high value for
useless. She's a human life.
Sort,
I get that she's a human life, but I mean, like, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Who the fuck is bringing anything even remotely related to marijuana? Remotely related to marijuana into fucking Russia, right? Like, what are you thinking? Anyway.
Yeah.
The Merchant of Death is free, so that's cool.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about it.
Incredible. Whatever. Well, you know what? You throw all the criticisms out there you want about the United States. We still have Justin Trudeau.
Yeah. That's true. Hey, should we pay some bills and then we'll get into what we want to
do
get
that.
into?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We've got a lot to talk about today, so we might as well get at her here.
Sounds good. Why don't you go first?
Starting off with. We got call sign 66 today, don't we?
Yeah.
So, I did the show notes, but I didn't print them out as I usually do.
Oh, you print them?
Easier. Well, just when I'm up at camp here, because I only have the one screen, whereas at home I've got a couple. So it's.
Oh, I only ever have one screen, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, fine. I'm stuck in my ways as an old guy. As Shane so eloquently put it the last podcast, that I'm 77 years old or thereabout. Anyway, this episode, as always, is brought to you by Call Sign 66. Whether you're just starting out in the precision shooting world or wanting to define the skills you already possess, or looking for guidance to take your job to the next level, train with Call Sign 66 for standard setting instruction and become part of the reason why Canadian precision riflemen are renowned worldwide for being some of the most proficient in their craft. And I don't want to hear any flack from you Yanks out there. Collaboration and contribution are vital to team success. Welcome to the Brotherhood. For upcoming training dates and to find out more about the Call Sign 66 team, go to callsign66.ca.
Love it. We're also brought to you by Odell Engineering, the geniuses behind the Canuck line of firearms. Odell Engineering is your premium importer and distributor of some of Canada's top brands of firearms, including Bergara, Rock Island Armory, Mission First Tactical, Hyperfire, and, of course, the made-for-Canada Canuck firearms. Find their products in a supporting dealer at OdellEngineeringLTD.com, on Facebook at Odell Engineering Ltd, or walk into your local gun store and tell them Phil sent you. So I just started working on the Daria TM22.
Oh, okay.
I showed it off, 2 weeks ago, the day I got it live or whatever, and then I was gone, and then, then I was sick, and then it was just a shit show. Mm-hmm. But I did get one video up on there, and I'll tell you this, first of all, this gun retails for $700. It's not super expensive, okay? And...
by Canadian standards.
By Canadian standards. Well, I mean, when you look at a lot of your, even... if you want to get a Ruger 1022 Tactical, you're looking at pretty close to the same price. It's not much different. I mean, you think okay, it's probably has a decent little barrel on it, not too bad. But dude, at 100 meters, I got as little as 1.3 MOA.
With what ammo?
I think that was with, I'm trying to remember now. I did a video on it. You obviously haven't watched my video shorts.
Not the whole thing.
Well, it's only a minute long. Man, now I can't remember which one got the... I'll find it in just a second here because I have it on my phone. Okay, so the one that got the best group. So I got... I didn't even write what it was.
Oh, well.
I know the Blazer shot pretty good, and it's just regular run-of-the-mill ammo.
It's kind of the standard, though.
It's kind of the standard.
Performs pretty in a standard sort of way across many firearms, it seems like.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was the CCI standard velocity that I got the 1.3 MOA.
That shoots well in many different firearms, it seems.
Yeah. Surprisingly, the Ely, I shot Ely action out of my SK ammo bending. Fuck off. That stuff greasy shit. I've got SK ammo. I didn't even take it out for that video. It's so fucking greasy and waxy. I just fucking hate
especially in cold temps like this too.
Yeah, exactly. David's asking if I've tried the Seiko Hammerhead rounds. I have not, but I saw them at XRO a couple of weeks ago, so maybe I will. what I was saying though is the Ely Action shoots, I think it was like 1.15 or something like that MOA out of my gray birch. So to have CCI standard velocity shoot like 0.15 MOA within a 0.15 MOA of that gray birch, that's pretty fucking impressive. Because you got to understand, the gray birch, that's a $1,500 gun.
It's crazy.
And I'm using what is this? I'm using a 5 to 25 scope on the gray birch. I've got a 3 to 9 entry level Viper on the TM22. So like anyway, I'm taking too long with this, but super impressed with it so far.
Excellent. That's good news. All right.
Carry
well, the rest of the key players in the ballistically speaking cult are Apex Optics. When you buy Apex, precision comes standard. Find them at apexoptics.ca and grab yourself a Rival 4 to 32 rifle scope and get on the mailing list for more exciting products coming soon.
Beautiful. Before I do the next one, I just want to mention something here. 1AB is asking, speaking of the Darya 22, why are the different thread pitches at the muzzle and the barrels? Now, from what I understand, Darya, obviously somewhere that they were making this rifle for has a different standard. And so they put a different thread pitch on it. Then Rock Island Armory brought them into the U.S. for a little while. And they, I think very shortly after they brought it in, they started bringing it, they had Darya change the thread pitch. Apparently they must not have known about it or something. And now it is 1/2 by 28 at Rock Island Armory. I am unaware if any rifle other than the 1/2 by 28 made it into Canada through Odell and Canuck. I'm not aware of any. If anybody has one, let me know. But I'm as far as I know, all of the ones in Canada, at least right now, have the 1/2 by 28, and they are standardized now. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not. I know the one I have is 1/2 by 28, and as far as I know, they all are now. Anyway.
Okay.
Bolt Action Coffee is our next one, bringing specialty coffee to the precision shooting world. Order coffee and merchandise at boltactioncoffee.com.
We're jumping around a little bit, but EM
sorry,
Precision Rifles in Leduc, Alberta. That's okay. Building Canada's finest precision rifles. Commission a build today at emprifles.ca.
And Apex Optics, when you buy Apex...
Nope.
You did
We
that?
already did that, yeah.
Okay, Ripstone Gunsmithing, craftsmanship done right. Contact Oscar at ripstonegunsmithing.ca and breathe life back into any firearm.
And finally, Mark Scopes Canada. The Dion Optical Design line of rifle scopes has a scope for all your hunting and shooting needs. Find Doug and Niza at markscopes.ca.
Jordan John Thurber. First of all, great name. Thanks for joining us. Question, is that beard real?
Which one?
I'm going to assume he's talking about yours.
Yeah.
You're using like beard grease now, right? Or beard butter, whatever the fuck they call it.
No, this
Really?
is natural. This is natural, fully chemicalized, camp water.
How are you trimming that? Like,
with great care.
yeah, are you really?
It's just kind of a hack and slash with my trimmer.
Really?
Yeah.
You got that shit down pat. I got to be honest with you.
Well, I've been using it since I was 12 years old.
You've been shaving since you were 12.
Well, sure.
Yeah,
No,
but
I've been
back then
trimming this beard since I was 12.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. So back then, though, you had to use one of the manual clippers, though. Either that or a straight razor. That's all that was available. I mean, could you have an electric trimmer when electricity wasn't invented for another 15 years?
My family was so poor, we could only afford one cutting instrument, and that was the sheep shears. Big things, and I had to do it out here, in bitter cold. We never had any heat when I was growing up.
While walking to school uphill both ways.
Naturally, absolutely, and 40 below all year round.
I get it.
Yeah.
David Wilcott thinks that your beard has bacon grease in it. You must smell delicious.
Well, you know what? The bears like it.
The bears like it.
I'm like the bear whisperer.
Yeah, I can imagine. I bet you taste good.
Actually, I'm like the bear screamer.
The bear screamer?
Yeah, run off like a little girl.
So, man, there's been a lot going on over the last couple of weeks, hey?
100%. I'm not sure where to start. I mean, we could sort of describe what things are, where it's going, where we think it might end up, how long
Yeah,
they
let's
all
do
that
that.
kind of stuff.
Because what was it? 2 weeks ago, we had Tracy Wilson on, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Hey, Rob, what's up? Um, so when Tracy was on, we talked about the base amendment, and I think the schedule and the way that I think these are being referred to is Section G is the paragraph that basically says all semi-automatic firearms and shotguns, magazines capable of 5 rounds, blah blah blah. Okay, now as far as I understand, the politicians are referring to this one of two ways: Section G or the Evergreen Clause, whatever the fuck
Yeah.
the Evergreen Clause is.
Well, yeah, it's a really convoluted fucking way of describing it, but
Yeah.
we understand its effectiveness or intended effectiveness, right?
Right. I'm just going to call it Section G.
Mhm.
Apparently, the schedule that has the big long list of with the Ruger number 1 and the Mark
The
V
Mark V
and the Buttmaster and all of those sorts of things.
and all the Berettas. What was
all-
it? 3-4 full pages of Berettas, for God's sake.
Yeah, and some of them are included in the ban. Some of them are exemptions. But that, as far as I know, the politicians are referring to that as G46.
Are you sure
So-
that's not a rifle solvent?
It might be, but I think it's also Section G,
Yeah.
subsection 46.
Is it 46? I can't.
I think so, something like that. But that's what I'm going to refer to it as. And if I'm wrong, everybody will know what I'm trying to say.
I have a hard time picking up stuff when I'm listening to that crap because I'm too busy yelling at the screen for some reason. Yeah.
Exactly. So everybody should know, and if you don't, just go back and listen to the first half an hour of 2 weeks ago, and Tracy described all that shit.
Mhm.
So what has happened since then is all of the shenanigans and some people speaking out against it, and Trudeau refusing to even stand up and answer questions in Parliament, and Raquel Dancho being kicked out of Parliament for the day, and a whole bunch of stuff, and the provinces.
The experts a little bit too. Holy Jesus!
Oh my God, these experts.
Yeah.
Like, man, like, what kind of an expert? First of all, if the experts didn't and we're talking about Murray Smith, if he didn't have a hand in creating that list, then who the fuck did? And who goes to appear as an expert witness without looking at the list? When what was it? Was it Glenn Motz or was
Dude,
it?
facts don't matter. That's
Oh.
right.
It was frustrating, and I think it might have been Glenn Motz, but it might have been one of the other guys that's just trying to get him to confirm what is on the friggin' list.
No idea.
And they're interrupting all the time. Well, if you could just like list specifically which section you're talking about, then it would
That
be
was a
much
bit of an odd
easily.
exchange. What
Oh.
was it? Like they're just chasing
They're just
chasing
trying to
a
waste
mouse
time.
in a fucking warehouse. Like,
Yeah, well, the Conservatives only have a certain amount of time, so they're just trying
That's
to
right.
waste time on it. Anyway, so in the last couple of days, it really seems to have come to a head. So over this gun shit, so in opposition to it, first of all, Saskatchewan government, Alberta government, the First Nations are coming out against it, but they're coming out against everything, so it's not much of a surprise.
yeah.
Then to kind of like the provinces really have had enough, especially Saskatchewan and Alberta. So they start tabling sovereignty legislation, essentially.
Right.
And that just like riles everything up and gets everybody talking about it even more. And then what happens after that? Carrie Price like posts a fucking photo standing in a field with a fucking shotgun. And the whole world loses their mind.
Mass murderer on the planet.
Yeah, well, and in conjunction with that, the CCFR puts out a discount code that is trolling Polly the group, and it is successfully, I think, at least for a period of time, turned into in terms of public perception, in reference to the shooting, which it wasn't, but obviously that doesn't matter. What matters is how the public sees it, and I think that has been successfully skewed. And then,
well, it always gets twisted. No matter what it is, it always gets twisted. And that one, I think, was just a little bit. How do I say? Too close to home isn't really the right way to describe it, but well, maybe it is. It was a little too tight to that whole goddamn thing, where they twisted it. They just had to twist it just enough, and it served their purpose. And
they did, and they're not idiots. And this is part of the problem: is the Liberal government is not stupid. The people who are really running that party, and the Prime Minister never really does, right? The people that are running that party are brilliant politicians, and their spin doctors are on fucking point. There's no question about that. Yeah. There's a reason that they have been the natural ruling party of Canada since its inception. So no big surprise that they skewed that and warped it but turned it to their benefit.
Yeah. Let me interject here. I've always maintained that there is a fine line, but there is a difference between intelligence and cunning.
Sure,
they are exceptionally cunning.
Sure, they are cunning, and immoral. Which, yes. I mean, I don't really think that any political group has the capacity to not be immoral. Their job Certainly. Is to get power, and they get it any way that they can. And we can't pretend that the previous Conservative government didn't have its own scandals and everything else. Although I think that this is next level what we're experiencing. So anyway, that all happened. And the Montreal Canadiens are saying Carey Price didn't know. Then Carey Price has to come out and say, yeah, I did know.
Yeah, I did.
And then, everybody, quite honestly, there was some, what do you call it? Dissension in the ranks.
Right. He did say, fuck yeah, I did. But here clearly is the intent, not what you guys spun it out to be.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And he basically said he does know who it is. At least for a news cycle, people like Raquel Dancho had to distance themselves from the CCFR in some gotcha interviews.
That's a tough one, man. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the CCFR came out. They made the decision not to apologize. They made the decision to clarify. They clarified that what they were talking about was Polly the group, and that they're getting back, and all that kind of stuff. And we're kind of summarizing right now, but we'll go back into go
listen. If they had have apologized. To appease the fucking masses or whatever you want to say, then without having to admit or being forced to admit that they were wrong, I think this was the right move. What they did, if they did apologize, that would just reinforce the shit that was being thrown at them.
Exactly.
So it was definitely the right move in that case.
I do agree with that. And we'll go over it more in detail. I just want to get a summarization. And I think the last thing that I want to talk about tonight, and just to end the summary, is all this discussion about the British Bill of Rights, the Canadian Bill of Rights, the Charter, what matters, what doesn't, how this could affect the lawsuits that are going on and what's going on with everything else. And we're going to answer a lot of questions that people are putting in the chat right now, for example, like the Evergreen Clause, how it would affect firearms in the future. 1AB is talking about that in the chat. Jordan John Thurber, JJT, double JT, is so who's lobbying against it? We'll definitely touch base on that. Boone's talking about the CCFR. Definitely we'll talk about all that kind of stuff. And David making the very true point that our gun control makes the USA look tame. Yeah, well, you're not wrong about that. We are the Canadian Collion Noirs. Call us that. Anyway,
there's a lot of stuff filing through here.
Yeah. So let's
as much as
yeah. Let's. Oh, and Nancy's joining us from El Salvador. That's awesome. How's the Wi-Fi? Okay, so I think everybody understands what C-21 is, what the amendments are. 1AB definitely made the correct point that the evergreen clause, the way that it's written, allows them to ban any fucking thing that they want in the future.
Yeah.
All they have to do is
Even
label it
banning
as a
without
variant.
naming, right?
Yeah,
Because
it,
the natural way that's set up, I guess, is that this type of firearm. So there's another one manufactured or whatever, or available to come into Canada from somewhere else, some other country, and it just automatically, because that firearm is a type fitting to whatever they've described in G46 or whatever, it's automatically outlawed.
Yeah. And nobody, I think, believed the liberals in CQ committee and nobody believed Bill Blair, and nobody believed Murray Smith specifically when they were saying that, oh well, the Ruger #1, it's only the 460 Weatherby caliber that would be banned. The other calibers wouldn't be banned. Bullshit. And he said that specifically about the Ruger #1 and about the Weatherby Mark V, that only the 460 Weatherby would be banned. And I don't believe that for a goddamn second.
It's not, no.
And
it's the whole goddamn works.
Exactly. And also, like, the other things, something that nobody even talked about, the Prairie Gun Works Timberwolf Tactical. Specifically named. What the fuck is the Timberwolf Tactical? There is no model called the Timberwolf Tactical. So what that means is we know somebody mutually who runs a Timberwolf for PRS, chambered in 338 Lapua. He does these like 3-kilometer videos, and he's a very good shooter, and he's a very good competitor, and he shoots a Timberwolf. Mm-hmm. It would be gone, and it is his sport shooting rifle, because how do you know what a Timberwolf Tactical is? Is it the Timberwolf that has the aluminum stock, like the chassis, or does the Boyd's? They never used Boyd's. What was the chassis, the stock that they put on them?
Well, it was their own. I don't know what it was called specifically, but
Scott, did you not know about this? Because we were talking about Scott. Like, did you not know about the Timberwolf? Put it in chat if you didn't know about it. Keep going, Rooster.
Well, where the hell was I?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I can't remember. Like all of this stuff, they just threw a wheelbarrow full of shit against the wall.
Yeah,
and we'll name all these things, and we know that it's going to get challenged. We know that it'll get chipped away at, and of these 400 firearms and variants or whatever there was for a quantity, we're going to end up with some of them being banned. So it's it's a game of numbers. Well,
it appears as though Scott did not know that the Timberwolf was on that list. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Scott. Hate to be the guy who ruins your day. Thank you, Alberta Rob. It's a Macmillan stock. Thank you.
Okay, so I think there were certain features of the Timberwolf that made it the tactical. I think
they didn't clarify that. PGW never made a rifle called the Timberwolf Tactical.
Okay,
they never did. Now, the primary caliber that the Timberwolf came in was 338 Lapua, which is not a 10,000 joules caliber, but I'm certain that they would have chambered it in any requested caliber that anybody. In fact, didn't they do it for the military in some Shaytak rounds?
I don't know if PGW did.
Something tells me that for the Air Force they had done some Shaytak rounds, at least at one point. So, but clearly it was made in more than just 338 Lapua. So
generally the Shaytaks take a bigger action than what the Timberwolf can.
Is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Typically, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't know for sure. I'm just like, something tell me that I thought At some point I thought I saw it. Look at what the government did to the Stag 10, erased the Canadian law comments and then reclassified it as prohibited. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. The FRT specifically said that it is a novel firearm. It said right on it, this is a novel firearm. And right? Then that was erased when it was banned as a named variant by the government of the AR-10. 1AB is also correct that Murray Smith, in his testimony to CQ, because I forget who was questioning him, but the conservative member that was questioning him said, "What about the Ruger PC carbine hunting rifle?" And Murray Smith thinks that he's so fucking smart. He corrects him and he says, well, actually the PC stands for police carbine. and I'm yelling at the screen, actually, motherfucker, right. It stands for pistol caliber. It doesn't stand for police carbine. You're supposed to be the fucking expert that decides all this shit for the RCMP, and you don't even know that Ruger PC carbine stands for pistol caliber, not police carbine. Yeah. Anyway. Now that we've ruined Scott's day and ranted a little bit, let's move on. I think everybody understands what's in it. Let's talk about the progress of the shit show. So Siku's going through all this kind of shit, and it really started with Carey Price making his post. Let's be honest. Yeah. I think that the gun-related organizations were doing the best they could to illustrate that this was a hunting gun ban. But I think that it really didn't get mainstream traction until Carey Price. Yeah. Yeah, I know bending. I almost spit my gum when I did my P, and so my L turned into an R because I was trying to not spit my gum at the screen. So I said
usually
pistol
I do that when my teeth pop out, and I get really, really passionate about things.
Wait till I get my false teeth. So anyway, Carey Price comes out, the CCFR has to go a little bit on the defensive. Really, I think for the first time since their inception. And for anybody, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about really what was going on. So let's just lay it out. And if I'm wrong, go ahead and correct me, people. But I think that I've got the sequence of events correct here. Polly and the CCFR, specifically Tracy and Rod, have been trolling each other back and forth, along with the spin doctors for gun control, as Rod calls them, and these other organizations. They troll each other on Twitter. And, me personally, I'm just I'm not into that. I get the court of a public opinion aspect of it, but I think that trolling each other back and forth, it goes beyond that. But regardless, they do, okay? Yeah. And Pauly Souvian screenshot their website where they were selling their merchandise and with the caption of Pauly being Pauly or something, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so in response to that, the CCFR created a discount code for 10% off of that merchandise, and the discount code was Pauly. Now I'm not going to say
no, it was Pauly, the organization.
Yes, they did it to troll Pauly Souvian. It was not a statement on the Polytechnique shooting at all. Mm-hmm. And the CCFR has since clarified that it was not. By the same token, I mean, who doesn't see that coming? I don't know. Maybe it was just like a spur of the moment thing, whatever. I'm not going to armchair quarterback the CCFR for one reason and one reason only, because I'm not putting up the hours per week that they are to try and keep our guns.
That's right. It's like yelling at your kid's hockey coach that he's a shit coach and you're sitting in the stands the whole time.
Exactly.
Doing nothing.
They spend probably more than 40, probably closer to 60, maybe even 80 hours a week, doing all of this shit, trying to keep our guns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it would be very uncouth, I think, How's that for a word?
Let's
To really armchair quarterback them. The reality is they are human beings. Do I personally think that it was a mistake? I think it was.
It was a
It's
high risk move.
exactly. Now, it's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, I would have done this and I would have done that. But the reality is, I probably would have made 100 other mistakes in the past that they haven't made.
Mm-hmm.
So to come down on them for one mistake is fucking hypocritical.
Absolutely. And let's face it, you already mentioned, you look at all the work that they're doing for us. They're putting in those 60 or 80 hours a week for us.
Yeah. And if they're fucking up every other week, okay, like we can start to question
then you have
things.
to reassess who you're supporting. But in this case,
Exactly. I was very. I'll give you a good example that I think is a good example. I was very vocally against the lawsuit stuff that was going on between the NFA and the CCFR,
Right.
and like I completely understood why the CCFR preemptively sued the NFA. I completely believed that this was just like a dick measuring contest because Sheldon Clare was upset that he felt like his was a little smaller maybe, and I was vocally against that.
Yeah.
And I feel that was something that the average person could give an opinion on reasonably without being hypocritical.
Yep.
Because it involved time, it involved money. It was, you know what, the discount code to try and sell merchandise. Come on, you know, let's keep our eye on the ball and let's understand that. Well, we have an NFA that's we have multiple gun organizations. Bending is saying you guys have an NFA as is it like our NFA? I think he might be an NRA. We have multiple gun organizations. I mean, the NRA in the U.S. is kind of the biggest one. We have, I would say, 3 primary gun lobby organizations: the CCFR, the CSSA, and the NFA. So they're like that. And there was a bit of infighting under the previous president of the NFA. Anyway, do you want to have the last word on the whole poly thing?
No, I think we got it out. It was. I think the intent was good in a way, not completely necessary for the goals of the organization, and I'm talking about the CCFR. It was a shot directly at the organization, poly. Okay. Not the event, not the unfortunate tragedy that nobody I know or have ever known would take any joy in that whatsoever. We all feel that was needless and senseless and everything else.
I think the only difference in terms of the tragedy between us and organizations like Police Souvien is that we hold the people responsible, the sentience behind the action, and they hold, for some insane reason, inanimate objects responsible.
That's right. Yeah,
that's the only difference. Nobody thinks that it wasn't a fucking tragedy. I can only imagine, like, coming home from work and like getting the news that like my wife was shot because she was a woman in a school. Like I can't imagine that shit. And when they insinuate that we don't care about that, is fucking infuriating.
Doesn't even have human to be your beings. Wife, man. Like every time you hear
anybody,
this, like Jesus Christ, it sticks a lump in your throat.
It does. It's inconceivable.
It is. Like, what kind of person does it take to do that? And that's the thing. They're trying to paint us as that type of person. Yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah.
It's not the fucking vehicle. Like you don't hear anybody calling for banning cars, banning tire irons, banning knives, shit like that. Fucking scissors. I don't know. You know.
And now that I've said that, I hope I don't
individual.
I hope I don't undo what I just said by saying this. But the other part of it that I don't like is I don't like using victimhood to justify a position.
That's right. To me, that's the weakest of support
absolutely
methods.
What people like Natalie Provost went through, I can only imagine what it would be like to have been shot by somebody, to be lying there wounded. You don't know if it's gravely wounded, whatever. Like that, what a horrible thing to go through in
Imagine
life.
the fucking terror.
And the
nobody will
PTSD
take
to work
that away
through. Yeah, I would never take that away from her. Ever. But that does not mean that she has the monopoly on pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean by that? Like, and when you hear Helene, what's her last name? Helene, shit, I can't remember her last name. She died in that shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Her brother, a long time ago, it was like in 2000 or 2002 or something like that. Her brother did an interview where he said that she was pro-gun, and she would not want her name used in the way that Police Souviens is using the names of the victims in the first place. And so I think it's not right for a victim to invoke the name of another victim who can't speak for themselves and use that as a platform for what has really just become advocacy at this point.
Yeah.
Cologne, yeah. Helene Cologne, yeah. Thank you, 1AB. You don't even have a unified group there. It's anyway. We're going to get ourselves in trouble by talking about this, but I think Paulie.
I wonder how perspectives would change. In a horrific event like that.
Mm-hmm.
How many people that were involved in something like that would surely be the best friend of somebody with some good guy? And I know the Americans hate this, the good guy with a gun.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Yeah.
How thankful would somebody be for somebody who's willing to stand up for some other innocent person, that saving that life and many, many others in a situation like that? Mm-hmm. And I'm not advocating for, everybody gets to carry.
Yeah. But I mean, a person with a gun stopping a maniac with a gun, there are examples of it all across the United States. All across the United States. Yeah. I think for me, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, and then if you want, we can move on. But for me, so about 7 years ago, in the winter, a short wheelbase SUV, a Toyota RAV4. And those things are notorious for spinning out because they have such short wheelbases. The geo trackers were notorious for it as well. If they lose traction, they go sideways immediately. And they're notorious for it. I was driving down 51st Street in Saskatoon, and a RAV4 beside me hit a little rut in the winter, lost control of her vehicle, sideswiped me, and knocked me into oncoming traffic. And I was heading straight for a 5-ton transport truck, head on. Mm-hmm. And luckily, I had really good winter tires, thankfully, and I cranked the wheel as hard as I could so that I didn't hit him head on. And what ended up happening, I hit him at such a steep angle that the front of his vehicle took off my rear view mirror, and he didn't even touch either of my side doors. That's how steep the angle was. And then he sheared the back end off of my bumper, starting with my back fender, and just peeled the back of the bumper completely off. If he had hit me head on, if I had had worse tires, maybe worse timing, or if I had just panicked and not tried to steer out of it, I would have been in the hospital for sure, potentially killed. Because we're talking about like 65 kilometers an hour meets 65 kilometers an hour. We're talking about a Volkswagen Jetta, a 2004 Jetta versus a 5-ton transport truck.
Good Lord.
And like, I'll be honest with you, it took some working through. Like, it shook me. Mm-hmm. But it would not have, going through that and surviving that does not give me the right to tell anyone that they can't drive a Suzuki Samurai or a Geo Tracker or a RAV4 or anything else like it. Yeah. It doesn't give me the right just because one person who doesn't know how to control their vehicle put me in an extremely dangerous situation and nearly killed me. Yeah. And for me, that's the way that it, like, I don't have the right, just because I went through something, to tell other people what to do.
No, but that's where society has gone. We're in that place now where it seems like the majority of people feel that they have a right to dictate how you fucking live.
Yeah, and that's the big crux of it, isn't it? Thanks, Dave. It's nice to know that people care about me. Usually people are just shit talking me, so it's nice to know that somebody cares for my well-being.
Hey, look, I took a lot of heat in your absence last week.
Did you? Good. Yeah. I'm glad to hear it. Anyway, so let's move on from Polly. Let's talk about who's pushing back. So obviously Carey Price has really started it. There's both MPs in both of our territories. Sorry, 2 of our 3 territories. I'm still living in the 80s before none of it was a territory. Are Liberal MPs who have come out and said that they would vote against it, and they will vote against it. Mm-hmm. So that's something, when their own caucus is voting out against it. The NDP, first, like Charlie Angus and the other guy, I can't remember his name, that's on CQ, they've spoken out against it. They said that they won't support it. Now Jagmeet Singh has come out very ambiguously saying that he won't support it. And what's being reported is that he won't support the Bill C-21 amendments. But he didn't say that. What he said was he won't support any amendments that affect First Nations hunting rights. Right. So, like, super ambiguous. And I understand that probably means that they just won't support the amendment as it stands. But he didn't really say that. And that is probably, I say probably, going to be enough to have the amendment scrapped.
Do you think so?
I do think so. The Conservatives are all going to vote against it. Both NDP members and CQ are going to vote against it. I think that brings it 6 against 6 in terms of CQ, because there's 6 Liberals, 4 Conservatives, or maybe there's 5 Conservatives. It really would depend on how the one bloc member is going to vote. Right. And I don't know if I see the bloc voting for this if the NDP and everybody else aren't going to.
You don't think so? I mean, they've always marched to the beat of their own bloody drum.
Yeah, they have.
Largely.
But I don't know. I just don't. I think that even in Quebec, they'll vote how Quebec wants them to vote. And I think that even in Quebec, the optics of this have turned south. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also possible that the Liberals will just withdraw it and introduce it as their own bill.
That's quite possible. Like I don't know. My part of my worry is, and you can give me your opinion on how you think this might go, but I suppose fear is the way to put it. Instead of withdrawing it completely, I fear that they're going to make exceptions for First Nations people. I think they'll still plow ahead with it as tabled. Mm-hmm. Or as proposed. However, now because this has come to light and the Assembly of First Nations came out against it, I think they're just going to make the exception, and that'll garner enough public support that that's fucking virtuous. So we can fuck the rest of them and still keep our indigenous people happy.
Here's why I don't think that's going to happen. Okay. Number one is because the First Nations organizations, ironically, so Alberta and Saskatchewan are being pushed to introduce more independency legislation for themselves, and the First Nations organizations are like, no, fuck that. And then people are used to First Nations organizations saying no to everything. And The Boy Who Cried Wolf, people stop listening to The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
It's so true. Absolutely.
And this is where I think that the First Nations organizations and governments do their people a disservice because they're constantly bitching about everything. And the reality is that I don't think that they represent all First Nations people, number one. And number two, they've become the boy who cries wolf. And they don't get the traction that they should get on legitimate issues because they just say no to literally everything.
Well, in a way, you think about it, that section of people, the First Nations as a whole, is very much like the firearms community in Canada, where they are themselves fractured across their organization. I don't want to call it an organization, but a people, a section of people, right? We're a community. I hate using that goddamn word, but anyway, they are their community. Our community is very similar in that we can't all agree on one thing. Everybody seems to have a bit of a different agenda. It's the same thing with our First Nations, and it's really too bad because the clout that we could have as cohesive groups would be far greater than what we're able to express right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and first, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that won't carry any weight. I do think that it will carry some. Yeah. And obviously it carries weight with Jagmeet Singh because his entire reasoning is based off First Nations hunting rights and treaty rights. And also, we also have to consider that, two things. Firstly, according to our criminal code, the governor and council cannot prohibit any firearm that in its opinion is suitable for hunting or sport shooting. And that hasn't been addressed yet. No. And I don't think it's been addressed because it's not, and I think that's because it's now isn't the time to address it. The time to address it would be like, okay, they try to pass it. Now we're testing the constitutionality of it.
There are stages to this, this strategy.
And I think that would become more of a thing then. Now, I will say on that topic, even the Order in Council, we all know that Stag 10s, BCL 102s especially, they were used quite a lot in hunting. For hunting, and they are very suitable for hunting. And the only reason that people didn't use them this season is because they're not allowed. I literally was building one for hunting when they got banned. And we also know, gun owners also know, that in the United States, the AR-15 is the most popular hunting rifle in their country. And the only reason that it's not a popular established hunting rifle in this country is because its restricted status makes it unavailable to use for hunting. Yep. So there's that, and then there's the other part of it too, beyond the First Nations aspect of it, is just the general hunting aspect of it. Carey Price, the Conservatives are doing a good job talking about hunting, and the CCFR especially, and the other gun organizations are doing a good job of keeping it to hunting. Which brings us to the next thing we should address. Right. Sport shooters getting their nose out of joint.
100%.
Guys, read between the lines, okay? Like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander here. Yeah. They want to ban people's 338 Lapua Timberwolves that are used for PRS shooting. They want to ban a whole bunch of other stuff. If they repeal the hunting aspect, they're going to repeal the sport shooting aspect.
So we the sports shooting side of things, the sports shooters have long complained that, and for good reason, I think, that the hunting gun owners aren't on board to the same degree that the sports shooters are, right?
I think, the sports shooters are way more involved. I think there's a large percentage of hunters that take their gun out once a year, and it's just seen as as a tool.
So we've always tried to figure out, how do we get these guys to come with us in this fight? Now, if this isn't what spurs them, if the appeals to that section of people, the hunters, Nothing else will. Now they have to be in this fight if they have any any inkling of being in that fight at all. It is now.
Yeah.
So
Well,
once
and
we get
Frank,
that support, then they
yes,
might see the importance of coming with us all the way.
yes, and frankly, it worked. It got
I
Carey
think so.
Price to make his post. It got the First Nation organizations to start complaining. It worked. Like, you can't argue with the results right now because the entire amendment is on the chopping block at the moment.
Absolutely.
And even 3 days ago, we were all still preparing to lose all of our semi-autos, right?
Yep.
So, and you know, Derek's right. We got to keep the forward momentum going, rally together. I agree with that. Like, our penchant for infighting is just like next level. I don't get it, but
Well, you know what?
and this is the thing too. We can disagree with each other because we are different people. We all have a common interest, but we don't all have the same interests. So we can disagree. In fact, like Rob and I appear to be disagreeing right now. But Rob's like, I disagree. And I'm like, oh, okay, which part? I'm not like, fuck you, Rob. like, like,
Right.
like, let's all pretend that we're adults, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And here's one thing I will say. If this amendment goes away, people need to be much more vocal about hunting with semi-autos.
Yes. Yeah.
They need to make it much more common. You hunt with an SKS, you need to tell the world that you're hunting with an SKS. You
I
hunt
think
coyotes
that's right.
with a 180 platform rifle,
It's-
you need to be putting that shit everywhere.
Well, it's got to. I think it's got to be sort of a sub campaign in itself.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
And
Proving
where does
to the general public that yes, these
that
are
these are hunting guns.
legitimate hunting guns. Yes.
And where does the onus go for that? On us. It's
For
on
sure.
us. If we're not showing that we're hunting with SKSs, M14s, 180 platforms, if we ever get the fucking stags and 102s back, those, you know, Scott's hunting with a timber wolf, absolutely. Like, you can't, like, the fact that that's even on the chopping block is fucking gong show. But this is the thing. If in between this, let's say that this amendment gets chopped, and the Liberals want to introduce it as their own bill. If like thousands of hunters across the country are starting to flood politicians with photos of them hunting with those guns, then things change. Things change. Why do you think that people are so up in arms about the SKS? Because it is such a ridiculously popular rifle. Now, they have to pick one rifle to be the poster child for it, sure. But I mean, like, make the hashtag semi-auto hunting.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I never thought of that. That's
You know what I mean? And I guarantee you guys, if they don't get rid of these in this amendment, you're going to see Ballistically Speaking doing hunting content with semi-autos. We'll do it with M14s. We'll do it with SKSs. We'll do it with 180s. We'll do it with the whole fucking gamut, and we'll do our part. You can guarantee that.
damn straight. And why wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
It's time.
Yeah, and I think people need to get behind that idea. This whole hiding in the dark thing, all it does is make it easy for them to say, well, those aren't used for hunting anyway.
Well, sure, because everybody's been so goddamn scared about doing that. Because like nobody wants anybody else to know that they do that, hunt with a semi-automatic rifle, because of the stigma attached to it. And well, the less they know, the better, right? But now I think, like you say, if this thing does get scrapped, man, we've all got to get out there and kill a whole bunch of animals with with semi-automatics.
Yeah, like let's and we're talking like 223.
Every bit of your hunting with
Yeah,
semi-autos.
I want to see 715Ts taking down gophers left, right, and center. Fuck that. I want to see fucking like WKs, MCRs, Sterlings. I want to see them taking down gophers. Hashtag 223 semi-auto gopher hunting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So Rob is clarifying.
Your
The sport.
PCCs, the 9mm take the lung out of a gopher.
Let's get those police carbines out taking the gophers.
Me gently with a pool cue.
Anyway, and grouse, rabbits with 715Ts, get her done. Anyway, Alberta Rob, the sport shooters' guns are gone, brother. I wouldn't be shocked if there was as many sport and range shooters as hunters in Canada. Man, I hope you're right. Like, nobody wants to see. And you're right. That's what you're saying. I disagree with. I did say that there are probably more hunters than sport shooters. And I hope that I'm wrong about that. I really do hope I'm wrong about that. It'd be great to see those numbers. Rob's making another good point. The fucking Maccabee. That was a non-restricted rifle up until the Ordering Council. Yeah. And it was used as a hunting rifle. Sure. And marketed as a fucking hunting rifle.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep.
I think we've beat that a little bit to death. I guess the topic was who's pushing back. Raquel Dancho, we should mention, got kicked out of Parliament.
Absolutely insane.
I think that it was probably orchestrated, and I think that it was well orchestrated. Well, did you watch the press conference that she did after she got kicked out?
Yep.
Did you think that it was a coincidence that she walked out surrounded by a large portion of only the female caucus?
It was, yeah.
And then the first thing she says is, I was taught by my mom, who is a strong woman, to call out the truth whenever you see it, even if it's a difficult thing or something to that effect. And then all the male members of the caucus came out behind her. You know what, man? Like it's not just the fucking left that can play identity politics. And I think that it was a smart move, and they can play it well.
You gotta keep up with the same strategy, I guess.
I don't necessarily agree with it, and maybe there's a difference between identity politics and the being subtle like they did it. I think Raquel Dancho is, first of all, I'm not a conservative guy, but I think it's pretty obvious that what's her name. Calgary Nose Hill.
Michelle
Rempel Garner is kind of being put on in the dugout for a little while, and I think Raquel Dancho is going to replace that position.
I think so.
If she hasn't already.
I think so. Yeah.
And no offense to Rempel Garner, I think she did a good job, but I think that Dancho is probably a better person. Pardon me, to play that position anyway.
Yeah. And she's pretty hot.
That's your criteria. Hey, whatever. All the women are voting for Trudeau because they think he's hot. Like, fuck it.
Raquel Dancho, though, has been great. Her talking points are a little bit circular or repetitive, but overall, like up until now, she's kind of been a nobody.
Dancho?
Yeah.
Yeah, for whatever reason, she didn't get a lot of play in the caucus from the other leaders.
No, man, she's stepped up and she's a dog on a bone, so to speak, here.
Yeah, she's doing great. What I like about her is that, and I see her working very well with Polyev, because Polyev can really get under people's skin, and he likes to pick, right? Dancho is much more calm, collected, matter of fact. Oh, you think that's the fact? Well, actually, it's not. Here's why. Okay, you don't agree? Well, I just proved you wrong. I guess I'll just move on. I think she does a good job with that. Whereas Rempel Garner was very much like people called her a firecracker. She likes like getting under people's skin, much like Polyev does.
Yeah.
And I think that having somebody prominent like Dancho, who's a lot more calm, is a better idea.
Yeah.
Tactically. Right?
Yeah, I think Rempel Garner was she's a bit more emotional, and she'd kind of, how do I say, lose her place a little bit.
Yeah.
Where Dancho seems, like you say, very good description, much more collected and focused, I guess. Yeah.
And one idea is making a good point. I think Garner made a very large tactical mistake when she put her money behind Brown. What's her first name? Or his first name? I forget his name. Anyway, he ended up having to drop out of the race. I think it was a very large tactical error on her part. And how anybody thought that anyone other than Polyev was going to be the next leader, especially somebody who was in the know like Rumpel Garner.
Yeah, like you had to have been asleep.
Yeah, really. Yeah. 1AB is also asking, did we see the way that DB Rota spoke to Raquel, asking her to apologize?
God, what pathetic behavior for a person with male genitalia.
Well, I think that he was Patrick Brown. Thank you, 1AB. He was, I think, pressured into it. First of all, he didn't even hear Raquel Dancho call face, the Minister of Immigration, a liar. He had to be alerted to it, and then he had to, But I think he was being pressured because at first he was like, "Will you withdraw the comment?" She stood up, she withdrew it immediately. Which that's the whole thing is just fucking silly.
Oh, it's a game.
Does anyone else think that it's fucking ridiculous that in the House of Commons it is considered worse to call someone a liar, even if you have proof of their lie,
but
than
it is to lie.
To call them a liar, or then it's a lie? Yeah, like what? Talk about backwards fucking priorities. If you've got proof that the person is a liar, then they're a fucking liar, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles, motherfucker. Man, this is why I wouldn't be a good politician, because I'd be standing up in front of the Speaker of the House. What's his name?
I'd be pointing fingers and spitting on everybody and everything else.
I'd be getting kicked out every other day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What the hell is our speaker's name? Rota. I'd be like, look, motherfucker, if he's gonna fucking lie, I'm gonna call him a fucking liar.
I am so glad that she didn't apologize. Like, fuck you.
Alberta Rob thinks I'd be a great politician. I'd be fuddle-duddling left, right, and fucking center in fucking House of Commons.
You know what? Fuck you guys.
Yeah. Loser. I'd start chanting loser. I'd get a wave going on my side of the bench. Loser.
Throw your drink box water bottle thing at them.
Yeah. I got your drink box water bottle sort of thing right here. Anyway, so he at first he seemed like he was going to be satisfied with her withdrawing the comment, but then the Liberals kept bitching and complaining, and it seemed like he was just pressured and like knee-jerk reaction. He's like, "Well, and will you apologize too?" And she's like, "What? No." And he's like, "Well, look, you said it. It's unparliamentary. You can't do it. Now you have to apologize." And he just tried to stick to his guns. I think he just made the wrong call, and he's like a referee. I mean, once you make the call, you got to stick to it, whether it was the wrong call or not.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, Alberta Rob, like my letter to the CBC. Thank you. I want to let everybody know I haven't given up on that yet. To date, I've sent them 4 emails, and it's probably not happening. But you know what? I'm sending them emails.
Well, listen, Chris, you started off on the wrong foot in the first place because you do have unacceptable views.
I do. I really do. I'm trying to respond to Mike.
Mike's next.
Yeah.
Where is it? There it is. Mike Hynek says, I apologize for the hurtful and accurate things that I have said.
That's exactly the way that I would be, though. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to withdraw my comments, and I would like to formally apologize for my hurtful and extremely accurate comments.
Yeah.
Anyway. I think, Boone, that's why I'm pretty sure this is orchestrated. It made people like her. It gives her some sympathy. I think that it was a smart play if it was illustrated, and I don't blame them if it was illustrated.
Yeah. On our side of things, it would have sort of reinforced some support, I believe, and on the other side of the fence, it may have. There's a chance, a small chance, that some people might have gone, you know what, she was right.
Yeah.
So you gotta try different tactics, I guess, when your opposition's slime.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think that the big thing that the Conservative Party needs to do right now is convince moderates that they're not Stephen Harper.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's very true. I never really thought about that.
And things like what
Yeah.
Raquel Dancho just did will go a long way to convincing moderates that they're not Stephen Harper.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that the Conservative Party now isn't Harper's Conservative Party.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Never really gave that too much consideration, but yeah.
Like, they've already got us. They've already got, like, first of all, they've already got conservative ideologists. They've already got gun owners. They've already got on the middle to right side of the spectrum.
Sure.
They need the middle to middle left side of the spectrum. And Raquel Dancho is a great person for that, I think.
We should have her on.
We should try to get her on. Now that she's getting all this attention, we'll never get her. We should let people know that we tried to bring Pierre Poilievre on when he was running for the party, and we sent multiple emails and never got a reply. So yeah, we don't get the big wigs.
Yeah.
Although you and Sean got O'Toole under the one time under the first Focal Plane podcast, like that was fucking kudos for that. But hey, should we move on to the?
Look how that turned out.
Yeah, exactly. Should we move on to this Bill of Rights thing?
Okay. Yeah, this is all you, Chris, because
well, something happened,
well
and I hear this a lot from the gun side, and I understand the sentiment behind it. In the past, in this country, we specifically, some of us, were given the right to have arms for self-defense.
right.
As history has progressed, that has slowly and steadily disappeared from our rights, documentation, and courts have consistently upheld the diminishing of that.
Yep.
But we still have people a lot of times, and I personally think it's because people just don't understand how our Confederation works, how the Dominion worked before that, and how these types of documents work. So I reached out to a political history professor who teaches at the University of Saskatchewan. And I had a discussion with him. He didn't want to come on the air. I don't necessarily blame him. He works at a very left-wing university, and he doesn't want to be involved in anybody saying anything that could get him in trouble as a professor. So I don't blame him. But he basically gave me a history lesson, and I'm going to parrot it to everybody and let me know, like Rooster, like if this is like helpful information or not as I go through it. So in terms of human rights documentation, there's like 4 big ones as far as Canadians and previous Canadians are concerned. First, there's the Magna Carta, the document upon which all other rights documentation has been based.
Right.
Then there was, and I forget the year for the Magna Carta. It was the 13 something, 14 something. I can't even remember what the fuck it was.
Yeah.
Then there was 1689 with the British Bill of Rights. And there were British in Canada at that point. Then there was the Canadian Bill of Rights that was written in 1960, Diefenbaker's government. And then there was finally the Charter of Rights and Freedoms written by Trudeau. I would say senior. He's probably the father of the other children. So Trudeau senior. No, nobody. That's one over your head.
No.
That was a Trudeau is Castro reference. No, okay, never mind. Anyway, written by him in 1982, and
not only by him though, right?
No, of course, yeah. But I mean, he was the prime minister when it was
He was the one that put it into play.
Yeah. So people specifically refer to the British Bill of Rights a lot because the British Bill of Rights, in their view, is expressly gives us the right to arms for self-defense. Now, here's the first thing. Let's go back to the beginning before I do that. First of all, the Magna Carta. The fucking king that ratified the Magna Carta reneged on it literally a couple of months later.
Yeah.
Caused a couple of wars. It's really famous. Look it up. It's a big part of history. The Magna Carta carries no weight in any modern society other than the fact that modern societies tend to base their rights on what was written in the Magna Carta.
So they try and reinstall it again years later?
Yeah, there's a whole thing.
Successful. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, the king who originally ratified it didn't even honor it.
Yeah.
So it's a symbolic document. Nothing more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. Later, David, thanks for joining. The British Bill of Rights in 1689. First of all, it was designed as a religious document to prevent the taking of Catholics of the British monarchy, the British Empire, whatever you want to call it. And it, in multiple places, expressly gives those rights that are written in the British Bill of Rights only to Protestants.
I didn't realize that.
It does. In fact, the section that it relates to arms for self-defense starts out by saying only good Protestants shall have the right to bear to keep arms, or however they wrote it, for self-defense. In fact, in other parts of the document, they specifically outlaw Catholics from taking power.
Right.
It was an anti-Catholic document. It's not really like a document of rights. So even if it did carry weight nowadays, and yes, it still exists. It's still on the docket, if you want to call it that. But it's been superseded by two other documents to begin with.
Right.
And it is, if you're not Protestant, it doesn't give you any rights anyway. Okay. So, I love the automatic comment when people say that. Alberta Rob, Protestant and Scottish, decent. I'm good to fucking go.
Same here, brother.
It's the natural response, right? Like, oh, good. I'm not Catholic.
That doesn't include me. Fuck yeah.
And then my family's Protestant too. So, okay, whatever. But regardless, even if it wasn't just a Protestant rights bill, it was superseded and intended to be superseded by the two documents in 1960 and in, I think Trudeau is Catholic bending. That's a good point. Wait a minute. But the Canadian Bill of Rights in 1960 superseded the British Bill of Rights, and it was intended to. And that's why it was even labeled the same way. And then the Canadian Constitution of 1982 was meant to supersede the Canadian Bill of Rights, and it did. Now, here's the other thing. The Canadian Bill of Rights does not specifically guarantee us the right to arms. That was removed.
Yep.
Okay? What it does guarantee us is the right to property. Unless removed by due process of law. Okay?
Is that another opinion piece?
Essentially, yeah. Sorry, 1AB. My dog's going nuts. He's half deaf. He thinks he hears something, and there's nothing you can do about it. I could yell at him on air, but he won't listen anyway. Dogs. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, he probably wants to go outside, to be honest with you, but it's fucking freezing out. He doesn't even know what he wants. Mike's like, crap, I can't own anything. He's probably like agnostic or Catholic or something. So, I mean, the Canadian Bill of Rights improved on the British Bill of Rights in that it gave these rights to everyone and not just Protestants, but they removed the verbiage of arms for self-defense and replaced it with just property and the right to security of the person. And those rights can't be removed except by due process of law. Right. And then the Canadian Charter, and that's still on the docket. That's still a legal bill. Notice I said it's a bill, and I'll come back to that. But the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in 1982 was intended to supersede the British Bill of Rights, And it did. And its wording is very similar to the British Bill of Rights when it comes to property and security of the person. They did remove the exact wordage of except by due process of law. And I'm blanking on exactly what it says right now. Somebody will type in that allows... that will remind me of exactly what it says. But they did change the verbiage a little bit, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's more akin to if it's in the best interest of Canada, then they can remove these rights. Okay.
Yep.
Now, here's the other reason why the Charter supersedes the Canadian Bill of Rights. The Canadian Bill of Rights is a bill. No, it's just a legislative bill like anything else, like C-21. And no bill can supersede another bill. So if one bill is written that is contradictory to another bill and they're both passed, one cannot supersede the other. Mm-hmm. However, the Charter is a foundational document of our Constitution, and it is designed to be given more weight than any bill. Yeah. And so the Charter supersedes all. And so when it comes to property rights, self-defense rights, everything that comes down to it, arms, everything, the bill that matters is the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Yeah. Was it written shittily? Or can we be angry that it doesn't include arms? Yes. Can we be angry that the Diefenbaker government removed that verbiage when they wrote the Bill of Rights? Because the Charter is written almost exactly the same in those sections. Yes, we can. Do you have a time machine? No. So quit crying over spilled milk. Yeah. We do not have the expressed right to arms in the country of Canada. The British Bill of Rights, quoting it, is it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's on the same level as this sovereign citizen shit. And the whole sovereign citizen argument is that the Constitution of Confederation was written under invalid circumstances to begin with. Therefore, the entire Constitution is invalid. Yeah. Therefore, the country is invalid. Therefore, its laws are invalid. Blah, blah, blah. Ipso facto, I'm a sovereign citizen. Yeah, it is fucking nonsense. And as in my opinion, trying to argue that that we have a right to bear arms because of the British Bill of Rights that was written in 1689 before Canada was a country, that was written for Britain, it's on the same level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when people are cornered, they reach, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can understand the sentiment.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are like, if there's a slim chance that this could carry some weight, let's jump on it. And you know, it's desperation, but in reality, it is nothing. It is a pipe dream. Yeah.
And in reality, what matters even more than the Canadian Bill of Rights, which is still a standing bill in this country, is the Charter. Because the Charter is designed to supersede rights. Now, that is why the 1991 Ontario Court of Appeal decision that was refused to be heard by the Supreme Court, that is the precedent that everybody refers to when they're talking about the court's already decided that we don't have the right to own a gun. And that is true under very specific circumstances. It was under the circumstances of a guy let his pal lapse and made the argument that the Bill of Rights said that he has the right to guns, so he doesn't have to have a license. And the courts basically said, nope, that's not what, you don't have the right to that. It was very specific. That is why the modern lawsuits, like the CCFR, is not making the right to arms argument.
Precisely. Yep.
When you boil it down, firearms are property. We have the right to own property. And it must be within due process of law and in the interest of the country and all of those things. I should look up the exact wordage in the Charter. And of course, I remember the exact verbiage in the Bill of Rights and not the Charter in the moment. But it is property. And to take it away, they have to have a good reason to take any property. Now, they make the safety issue. They're dangerous, so we're taking them all away. Okay, but they can be used safely. That's why there's a licensing system. And so the argument can very easily be made, that's enough. And that's the argument that's being made.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very good argument. I think that it actually has a chance. And that's why the 6 lawsuits that are being heard right now have a chance.
Yeah.
And why we should support them. And why we should support them with our money, why this show has supported it with money, why you and I personally have, and why we will continue to.
That's right. Yep.
Now,
it's
here's
our strongest defense at the moment.
Correct. Now, here's what the political professor told me that I thought that was really interesting. You're familiar with the notwithstanding clause. They've hit the news recently the last little while.
Yeah.
Very notably in the province of Saskatchewan when it comes to Catholic schools.
Yeah.
And very recently used by Doug Ford in Ontario to prevent school teachers from striking.
We're with you.
So the notwithstanding clause. So who was it that made the comment a little earlier? Was it Alberta Rob or 1AB or maybe Mike Heineck? It was Mike. So he made the comment. Fun fact, Trudeau Sr. wrote the first draft of the charter himself, and everyone that saw the first draft was essentially like, what the fuck is this? And then the Canadian charter got completely rewritten with the provincial input. That is true.
Oh, yeah.
However, also to get the provinces to sign even the rewritten charter, they said, we want a notwithstanding clause.
Right.
The notwithstanding clause allows both the federal government and the provincial governments to say, notwithstanding anything else that has been going on here, including court decisions all the way up to the Supreme Court, we're just going to do this anyway. And so when the Supreme Court in Ontario, when the Supreme Court, wasn't the Supreme Court, I forget which level of court it was, but when the courts basically decide that in Saskatchewan, you have to prove that you're a Catholic, otherwise you can't attend a Catholic school, the Saskatchewan government said, no, notwithstanding your court ruling, we're not going to allow that to happen. And we are now saying that you don't have to prove that you're Catholic to attend a Catholic school. And that's the way that our system works. And in some ways, that's bad. I think what Doug Ford did was absolutely authoritarian.
Sure it was.
It was autocratic. It was fucking bullshit. And it was a very negative use of the notwithstanding clause. I think what Scott Moe did in terms of allowing or preventing the proof of Catholics before you can go to a Catholic school, I think that was a good use of the notwithstanding clause. Now, here's what we have to understand and how that relates to guns. Even if the Supreme Court sides with the CCFR, for example, and the ordering council is null and void, they order all this other shit is unconstitutional, and they say, no, we do have the right to property, and if they want to take that property away, they have to demonstrate a good reason for it. The federal government can say, notwithstanding the Supreme Court's decision,
Yep.
we're doing this anyway.
Yep.
They can, and we have to accept that.
Yeah.
We also have to accept that provinces do technically have the power with the Saskatchewan First Act, with the Alberta Sovereignty Act, to say, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
We're just like in the province of Saskatchewan, we are not recognizing that law. Why are we not recognizing that law? Because we do not recognize that it is a threat to public safety, and therefore it is protected under property laws. And so as it is protected under property laws, we are enforcing that, notwithstanding the federal government's bill.
Mm-hmm.
That would take some balls.
Well, at least they've made the first step. It's far more than what's been done in how long, if not ever.
Yeah. And that's why this whole thing is really interesting, with the provinces starting to show a little bit more gumption and some willingness to push back against the federal government. Right now, when it comes to sovereignty, like what that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, I know. And that's why there's so many people against it. What do you mean? We've been eating out of the same fucking trough our entire lives, fed to us by our overlords at the federal level.
Yeah.
No, this can't be right.
Yeah. And the reality is that all it will take is the political will of the individual provinces to say, look, we think that we believe that the federal government does not have justification for this. We believe that what they have done is unconstitutional. In this province, we are going to uphold our constitution. We recognize that these firearms are used safely every day by hunters and sport shooters and collectors. And therefore, we are going to pass this bill. We are going to use the notwithstanding clause, and we believe that they are safe, or whatever else. And this is where the Saskatchewan Firearms Act comes into play. Because Saskatchewan has tabled their own Firearms Act. And that's
quite ambiguous at the moment as well, too, because
it is.
It's really very, very, very vague as to how that could even benefit us. What they talk about in that is licensing and registration in a different manner. Mm-hmm. Essentially, right?
Yep.
And we have to give it a chance. Let's face it. We've got to give it a chance. There may be something there, but there's a lot of people that are looking at that right now and going, "Well, fuck me. This is just an added level disguised as something else." But it's still in effect ineffectual, and it may be. We've got to give it a chance.
And we have to understand, though, that a fully established and passed Saskatchewan Firearms Act could allow them to say, okay, you don't have a federal PAL or a federal RPAL, but you have a provincial firearms license. Well,
good to go
in this province, with a provincial firearms license, you can use this firearm.
That's right. That's the big thing right there.
And here's the thing. It would take a lot of... all of this has happened before, and it has happened again. 5 provinces and I think it was 5 provinces and 2 territories in the year 2000 said that they would not enforce the long gun registry.
Right.
And that they would not allow provincial prosecutors to prosecute any offenses under the long gun registry. Mm-hmm. The federal government under Chrétien came back and said, fine, you don't have to. We will charge these motherfuckers with federal prosecutors. We will, and there was a big fucking argument between the provinces and the feds. Now, as far as I know, nobody actually did get charged in those provinces that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But I mean, it creates a really interesting dynamic.
Sure it does.
Between the provinces because
technically, and make no mistake, it's really hard to navigate as well. Because in instances where there is something,
I think you dropped your mic. You're muted.
Really?
Oh, now you're back. That was weird.
Oh. Anyways, I was just saying it'd be hard to navigate in a situation where someone is potentially charged federally.
Well, so for all intents and purposes, if you took a Sterling R18 out to the range and everything that we just talked about happened, first of all, the local RCMP, they're going to be ordered not to do anything about it, and they probably aren't going to do anything about it. And you will provincially be following the law. You'll be committing a federal crime. Do the feds really have the appetite to make an issue out of that?
It's hard to say anymore. Like it's been so unpredictable.
Yeah.
these last
Alberta
several
Rob
years.
made another good example here when BC used the notwithstanding to decriminalize hard
Yeah.
drugs that are federally regulated. Yeah. It takes a lot of political will to bring your own police forces in to try and enforce a federal law that a province has passed a counter law provincially. You know, so anyway, it's very interesting times. If we're able to like take a step back from us and separate from it, and it's really really interesting times politically.
That's a lot to ask for a passion. I don't like to call it anger. I like to call it passion.
but
For a passionate individual like me.
but you know what? I firmly believe that this too shall pass, and we'll all be telling our grandchildren about that really interesting time in history when this happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was flabbergasted when the professor told me about all of this stuff and how this stuff actually works. Hopefully everybody else found it interesting, because otherwise wasted the last 25 minutes of everybody's time. But
No, you know what? It's good to know. It gives perspective on like the everyday take of our laws, right? And what make up our laws and constitution and everything. It's if you don't know the background, the history of it all, it's hard to decipher all this stuff, right? And let's face it, how many people know about our charter and what's in it, right? And our Bill of Rights and how those interact.
yeah,
So
and Rob
knowledge
right.
is power.
Well, I completely agree with you. I always think that knowledge is power, and I think that the more we know, like we're in a position where we have to be in the know,
Absolutely.
because we're automatically we're not starting from neutral. We're always starting, from the underside, if you want to call it that. We always have to crawl ourselves up and prove that we have the moral high ground.
Yeah, we're wrapped up in the wheel, and the fucking wheel's going round and round. We're just trying to figure out a way to stick a spoke in it, or a stick in the spokes.
Exactly. Rob's got an interesting point, and I think that this would happen. Again, in this theoretical exercise, the RCMP would use firearms as an add-on charge, like, oh, you were driving drunk and you had your WK.
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, there's an easy way to avoid that. Don't drive drunk.
That's very true.
There's another easy
Mind your P's and Q's, boys.
Mind your P's and Q's. Be a good citizen. I mean, that's what we should be anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
100%. And it's what we say we are. So as long as we are what we say we are, we have no problems.
Yeah.
Guys, throw us a like on the Facebook. Throw us a like on the what's it called? The thumbs up on the YouTubes if you're watching us. Do you take the final say here, Rooster? Because I always take up all the air in the room. You go ahead.
Well, do what Chris said. Send us an email at info@bspodcast.ca. Ask us any question you like, as long as it's not too personal, I suppose. Firearms related, hopefully, maybe even political. We'll engage with you. Send us an email. Let us know how we're doing. We also, again, want to thank all the people out there that help us out with this show, the listeners, and of course our sponsors. We've got Shane and Steve with EM Precision Rifles, Miles Carey and Cappy with call sign 66, Duncan and Rob at Bolt Action Coffee, Phil Odell at Odell Engineering, Doug and Nisa with Mark Scopes Canada, Vanya and Carly with Apex Optics, Oscar with Ribstone Gunsmithing, and of course all the gun groups out there, the CCFR, the CSSA, the NFA. Please support those organizations. They are our tool for fighting for what we value.
That's right. And there is no doubt that the CCFR is fighting on our side. And whether you see the poly code as a misstep or not as a misstep, it doesn't erase all of the good things that they've done. And if you're one of those people who says that they haven't done shit, good Lord, either you have completely unrealistic expectations, or you're just not paying attention.
You know, when I was having this conversation at work today, and I don't mean to shame anybody or wag a finger at anyone. We all of us sit around and talk with each other and complain about how things are going, what things have been done, what things have been taken away from us, where this is all going, all that kind of stuff. But what have you done? What have you really done? What's your solution? And a big part of our solution right now is supporting the organizations that fight for us. I mean, individually, we don't have much of a say in what's going on other than voting and writing your MPs, flooding their desks with letters. But throw your support behind our different organizations.
Yep.
Yes. Listen, Jordan, I work with this beard. Well, listen, there's a difference. Working lots and working hard. Let's be realistic. I work lots.
Fair point.
So make a difference out there, folks.
Yep.
Support our organizations. Be vocal.
I got my letters out already,
Yep.
so hopefully everybody else has got their letters out.
Yes, sir.
Hey, if anybody's interested, if anybody's got an extra hour and 11 minutes or so in their time, we just today launched the video on our YouTube channel of a sit down with JR Cox and Phil O'Dell, two OGs in the gun industry. They've both been on the show before. And so we sat them down and I did this thing. I was talking to to Phil's employees. I'm like, guys, I'm just turning the camera on. I'm not even going to tell them the camera's on. I'm just going to let them go. Unfortunately, they knew the camera was on, but we didn't tell them what to talk about. They just sat down and chatted with each other for over an hour. And they came up with some pretty good stuff. They told some really good stories about from the past in Canada, things that were going on. They talked about some former political stuff that they were around to see and even involved in. They talked about some regulation stuff, some things about JR trying to buy a previously existing gun shop in America and the illegal things that previous gun shop was doing, and how they wrangled around that whole thing, and that whole thing. They talk shit to each other, which is kind of fun to listen to.
That was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was just a really good I didn't want an interview. I just wanted to be a fly on the wall to see what happens when two elder statesmen in the gun community in Canada get together and just chat with each other. And I think that we got that, and I think that it turned out really well. So if you have the time, take the time to watch it. I don't think you guys will be disappointed, and I hope you guys like it. So
Gotcha.
That's all I got.
All right, buddy.
Is that all we got?
Good show, Matt. Yeah, I think so. We covered a lot of ground here and hopefully cleared some things up for some folks out here.
Beautiful.
Keep your heads high.
Yeah, keep your heads high.
Yeah.
Still lots more to come, man. And you know what? Some of it might actually be a little bit positive. So,
yeah. You bet. All right,
until
buddy.
then, we'll see everybody next week.
You bet. Wait, do I have the button? I got the button.
Which button? The show button or the end broadcast button?
The show button.
Okay, I'll get the end broadcast button then.
Peace. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
This right here has the ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
You're listening to your weekly dose of BS. Ballistically Speaking. The Ballistically Speaking Podcast.